Hey guys, my name's John Pearson, and this is my reflective video of the reimagined version of uh, Yavin for Jedi Knight 2. Okay, so to start with, uh, I looked at the feedback that I got given, and I got really poor marks for my research, understandably why. I'm not going to show the work that I've previously done because it's pointless. I've pretty much started from the start. So first, I looked into what an environment artist actually does, and um, that was explained in model level design. Uh, they are the ones that make the models, make the textures, and sometimes make the lighting. They can also be interchangeable with level designers who create the environment within the engine and make the kismet and the gameplay and all that sort of cool stuff. So workflow. So UDN has pretty much become my Bible. Uh, from concept to completion, we go and get our concept. We break down the concept. We have key structures, which are often unique, and modular sets. These are like walls and trims and stuff that can be used over and over again. It's a really efficient way of working. With these, you can make a block out, and which will like allow you to make the gameplay and concept of gameplay with Kismet and all this other sort of stuff that they can do. The artist will then go and start creating the meshes that they need. So to do this, they'll go high poly, low poly, unwrap, normal maps. Then they will start the material creation process. So this is making the diffusion specular. This will be then put into the engine and and shaders will be built. Prototyping and scripting, blah. So then you mesh it out with the meshes that you have, obviously. This could mainly be done within the blockout. It's just sort of going over it again and making it pretty. Then we go into lighting, which I've done a fair bit of, but it's not perfect. I've done a little bit of streaming, but not too much because, you'll see later, it's quite laggy. Yeah, but that's the workflow. So we'll start with the concept. Here's the concept. This is the original composition. I didn't personally like it. I didn't like that you start on this side over here, because I want to be walking down here like a badass, ready to fight Disarm. So this is about where you start. It's a bit meh. Yeah. So I looked into a breakdown of this cave. I shouldn't have done that. But basically, it's got a foreground, a midground, and a background. Like the foreground is stuff that's all up the side here, and then the midground is things that are going on in the level, and then the background is like the water and the rocks in the back. It's really useful. I hope that doesn't play. Okay, so I looked into this as well as a sort of concept that I wanted to integrate into this level. It's got sort of a foggy, misty sort of effect, and you walk down into it. Originally, you start on like a twirling staircase, and then you walk down towards this focal point, which is really oversaturated and but brightly lit, I'll say. And it's all channeled. So you've got a sort of a point towards it through these sort of sections here. that's what I wanted to create with the staircase. So yeah, that's that. Last semester, Mike said to me, I've approached it with unique sculpts, and this isn't necessarily the best approach. And I agree with him. Now, I didn't then. um, with reusable tiles, tileable textures, and yeah, it has kept the work down, but there are other methods that I've seen and have tried out, but not in this. So the landscape could have worked, but it wasn't ideal for this project. Um, just made it difficult. So I looked into exactly what I should be doing, and Thiago came up, a legend. Um, he showed me paneling, like the 4 sets and stuff. Um, showed me like keeping it to the grid, so all of these will snap nicely. They're also clearly reusable tiles, so you could use an atlas with it. This is great for a sci-fi environment, but I'm not sure how well it would have worked in the environment I used. I used it a little bit, but not as much as I probably should have. It's something I could have definitely improved on. So I looked, because this is sci-fi, I looked into something that was more towards what I was trying to make. And where's all? This guy came up. He showed some really good stuff. I can't show you a thing here, but this is how he built the wall and the floor panels. I tried to recreate this a little bit because it's actually I actually heard about it first by Philip K. I'm not sure what his actual second name is, but that guy. You build like a couple of bricks, or in this case, he built like 6 for each row, and then built with them to create this wall. Did the same for the floor and added little bits of rubble. As you can see, it's really effective, and he hasn't actually added like too much damage, and he hasn't really used a noise modifier, which I did, because I thought it sort of worked. But looking at these, it makes me feel that I should look into crack alphas and or brushes and all that sort of stuff, because this is like beautiful. He used alphas to create these patterns as well. It's really cool. So this is the approach that I took. It's by this guy. So you get like a rock and you beat it up. I got 4 different rocks, and I used those rocks to build 3 variants of the original wall, and then 2 variants of like a beaten up wall, which I didn't actually use the beaten up walls because it felt unnecessary, and the cracks that I put in didn't really work that well. However, I did try to do it. It's just I didn't succeed. So beat him up. This is a really good tutorial of it. So he uses like the planar brushes, the trim dynamic, clay tubes, all those brushes, and creates a really nice effect. So yeah, that was pretty much the modelling side of things. I used 3D Coat a fair bit. I created, I think, 3 different models solely in 3D Coat. It's become like my best friend. It's awesome. Like you can just add in like, these little sort of snakes in. retop a room and then paint room. It's just beautiful. But yeah, you don't care about that. So I also painted color diffuse into this, and on one of the models, I think I baked out a normal map from this and an AO from this. I don't think it's the best idea. I think X normal is far greater. It just does the job a lot better, in my opinion. The bakes are cleaner and more detailed, I guess. Just like X normal. So I use that. For texturing, I use DD. The might of DD. Can feel the hate already. If it loads up. It's not going to load up. Okay, well, never mind. Yeah, I use DD for most of the assets. Oh, there we go. So I could add in a mesh here, and then I could have like a preview of it here, which allowed me to sort of adjust the intensity of specular. It's basically like having marmoset directly on your texture. It's perfect for making quick textures. It wasn't. I wouldn't say that you could only use DD. You need to add in a bit extra yourself, like tweaking a few things. This material ID thing is a godsend, and it sort of made me rethink of the use of color maps. So you'd block out colors, and you'd be able to mask that in your UVs, which is really useful because it means you don't have to sort of select everything that you want. So like, say if you've got skin and you've got cloth, like you'll only pick the skin because it's like a block, and you'll just magic wand it and it'll be there selected, and you can just work on that in Photoshop. I can't really see a downside of that. I watched on top of doing the speculars through this, which made some pretty nice detail, because it brought out a cavity, the AO. Oh no, I'll tell you what I put in actually. I put in a tangent. I put in ambient occlusions to most of them. There was a few that the ambient occlusions, the ones that I'd baked, were extremely harsh, and they had like really thick black blobs on them, so they were pretty much useless. So I just used the normal map, basically using the green channel and the red channel to create an AO. I used object space. On this couple I used a cavity, not many though. But yeah, it allowed me to create specular, diffuse, height maps, everything. And with the detail that I've put on, I could create like a set of a template for how like one wall would look, and then copy that template onto another wall so it's similar, which is like the quickest way to create a similar thing, or a similar looking thing, but with variation of. So for example, like DD uses cavity, the cavity map, to like sort of use its indents and where the cracks are going to be, and all these other little details. It's like using the ZBrush poly paint, where you can turn on a cavity, paint only cavity, and you can add in detail like that. But yeah, it's not perfect, but it's bloody good. I watched this video, which Greg put up on Facebook. It's really pretty good. It goes through putting it in Marmoset so you can test it, but you can do that in DD and you can see it. But I like this method as well because it doesn't take that much understanding to know how to tweak it. So it's just taking the sections that you want darker, or using the contrast and curve modifier, the curve in Photoshop to create the right amount of specularity. So this shouldn't really be black because it's really rough, so it won't reflect light. Whereas these are fairly rough, but they're smooth. They're a lot smoother than this, which means that they reflect light. So they want to be more towards the white colour, but not much because it is still a grainy surface. Okay, so I figured out how to build these modular sets, and I put them in the engine. Got a block out. Oh yeah, loads of influences from Bioshock and Lovecraft. But yeah, I'd made block out, and it all looked like this. It's all exactly the same, and it's really boring. It wasn't good enough for what I wanted, and I wasn't happy with it. And all maps made it less flat, but it still repeated over and over again, so it wasn't really what I was after. It wasn't like a bumpy surface like rocks would be normally. So to fix that, I looked into methods of making variation. This is my first method, vertex painting. It pretty much blew my mind when I first learned about it. As you can see here, like, you can paint on it, or you can paint in via a height map, which I'll show you later, that I have done and have achieved, and it's limited in what it can do, but the usefulness of it is second to none. Like, for walls, you can just make as much variation as you like, or floors as much variation as you like. It's genius. So I also learned about this.
You can see that it's moving along the y-axis.
It sort of animate and move. I thought, how can I adapt this to make it work for what I wanted? So I looked on UDN, the Bible. They showed me this. It kind of worked, but not perfect, and I'll show you it later. I took the sign out because that's what was making it wave, and I only wanted it to go up and down based on vertex painting. So I'll show you that shader later on. It's pretty cool. Okay, another one is with this vine, I could create a dangling wire effectively, which was set up like this.
And you can just follow this kind of down a chain to make it very easy. Let's get back out of our constraint editing mode. To do this, we're going to tap the B.
Create a sort of dangling wire, or a dangling vine in my case, which was really useful, and it added a lot to the scene, especially as they're dynamic and you can shoot them and they'll react. It's really useful. Another thing I saw for the vines is this. It was in the foliage map because I was having a look around at the way that they built it, and these pieces are all modular. Really, I should have looked at this before I started building anything. It taught me a lot, and this spline actor allows you to drag out and act as if it's a spline in Max, which is really useful, and I'll show you later how useful it is. I didn't manage to figure out how the hell they managed to split it like that, but yeah, it's cool. I also looked into fracture measures. There's a little bit more of there's a more advanced version of it now, but I never got the time to actually look into it properly. It allows for rigid bodies. it allows the fractures to work as rigid bodies, which is awesome. But I never got to finish it. Post processing, quick look over with Chris Alvin. He's brilliant. He showed me the original sort of X painting as well. So he uses the volume. I used a chain process and plugged it into the world asset. But you know, it's pretty much the same thing. It's got a definition of all the different things. Really useful. For shaders, I used torrents. Some really useful stuff like learning about opacity and lerps and all the sort of useful stuff that I didn't know before. I sort of learned off this. There's also a UDN page which has everything, but I didn't get enough time to read through it, even though I am going to as soon as I possibly can. But yeah, enough of this rambling. Let's get to the good bit. So quickly, this is the concept. The workflow points towards the focal point. You got the background, foreground, and your midground, which is your focal point. That's what I'm going for. This is what come out of it. I compared it to Bioshock Infinite. You've got these sort of lights and flickers off the candles, and makes this sort of red shade on these grey materials. We've got this beauty piece, which I could never make. I don't think I could try. I never did for this project. But yeah, that's what's coming up. So I'll show you in the engine quickly. Okay, so as you can see, there's a hell of a lot of decals. This has caused me a load of problems. I didn't realise that draw calls, each decal made a draw call. So I thought it would stack up like, say, this brick would, like where there's 500 of them, just copy it over and over again. I thought it would do that. It hasn't. It's made one for each one. I'm guessing that makes sense because it would make a different sort of projection upon this surface for each different element. So it kind of makes sense, but I didn't think of it like that at the time, and I didn't research it. I didn't check, obviously, because otherwise I wouldn't have done that. So here's walls. Blocked out. Yeah, back to the workflow. So it's blocked out with all these different pieces. Simple enough. What was after that? Okay, so it was meshed. So all these different pieces are exported out into Max. In Max, I took those pieces for scale. I then created high poly for them, baked a normal map from them, put this normal map through. I also I also baked an AO bent normal map for some of them where it was relevant, a curvature map where it was relevant. I had a look through the channels, I put them in, had a little play, and then I came across Didu. Didu takes all these maps and merges them together. If an AO isn't baking right, it can fix it with just using the green channels and create a really good cavity. I think the cavity map is just the green channel and the red channel sort of merged together with an overlay, but it makes a really nice effect. Didu has a lot of functionality for speed and is very efficient for that kind of thing. I'm using it a lot now. You can probably tell by some of these things that it's very Didu heavy. There's still a bit of variation that I've added in without Didu. So like Greg said in feedback to to add a bit of variation to this brick, because as you can see, it's very freaking boring. There's no detail to it whatsoever. So to do that, I did run it back through Dido, because it has presets and I could do it on all 5 variations of the wall that I had. I then also, I'll just show you what that came out as. So you got this, and then added a cloud surface which has a bit of darkness and a variation in darkness and low lights. Whether this is great or not, I'm not really sure. Put it at a low opacity. It just makes it sort of pop a little bit more, but it's not great. And then adds a little bit of noise. For the specular map, I used a video that Greg put up about the curvatures, but most of it was already done through Dido. As I've already got that preview, I can see what I like and what I don't like. I put it into Marmoset, and I could see some little edges and some white defects. So like in here, this was too shiny. So to fix that, because it's grain, I painted black over it and made it sort of, less shiny. Because grout doesn't have a specular, it would be nice and black like this. This also was a bit too harsh. It's still this sort of surface, so this had to be sort of greyed out. There's just little bits that needed fixing. This isn't it, it's just the blue channel, but just for an example of the workflow. These were then meshed out in this level. I used decals, I used vertex painting, which I'll show you, but I'm not sure if my computer's going to let me, because it's dying right now. Yeah, it's going to let me, I think. Okay. No. Okay, so as you can see, sort of, there's a height map applied to it, so it's only going in the grates where it's sort of black. If I ramp up this, then it'll go over it and onto these little bits. I can then make a little bit of it wet if I'd like. Maybe a little bit less wet, because it's got a bit of a reflection on it as well, which I'll show you a little bit more about in a second. And then if I wanted to add height to it, I'd just pick the blue channel, which I've applied a world bump offset to, and I can raise it a little bit. This isn't ideal. Chris Albert showed me. The problem with it is it doesn't create a collision. So if a player is like walking on it, his foot will go through it. It's not too bad considering it's sand, but it's not ideal really. Another problem we get with it is this. It sort of breaks unless you're looking at it at the right angle. So this vert sort of pulls away from these verts, like they're not connected or welded or whatever. It's simple enough to fix, it's just a pain in the ass. If it was a plane, which I kind of wish I'd done now, because this is still too repetitive for my taste, and too flat as well. But you can get a fair bit of variation from it. I mean, it looks like it's got rocks, yeah, and decals everywhere. These sort of flapper. I'll show you actually. Let's jump in. I'll show you the stats as well. FPS. Okay, so as you can see, these are sort of flapping in the wind, like randomly. You've got these vines as well, sort of dangle around, and if you shoot them, they'll wobble and whatever else. This frame rate is not just because I'm recording. I tried the foliage map recording earlier, and it was going at 50 FPS. I have no idea what it is really doing this. I think it's the decals that are causing all those draw calls that's the problem. Light shaft, I've got two dominant lights, which is a problem. It's come up as several errors. I don't think it's what's causing the FPS drop, because I've deleted one, rebuilt it, and it doesn't make any difference. The reason for having two dominant lights is I wanted a light shaft here, and I wanted a light shaft down here. Because it's all well and good having it up there, but if you come down here and it's like boring light and, you know, no good. I've added this fog. There's actually 3 fog volumes. One is for the deep mist, which you can add a variable to make it thicker. One is for a sort of lighter mist, which is about up here, and then there's one way up to the top that adds a volume for this to sort of show. If I show you in here, this is how I intended it to look, but for some reason it won't do that. It would like cause a haze in your eyes as you walk down, but I can't figure it out. What else have I got? Oh yeah, I was going to show you the reflective thing. So instead of using a cube map, because I wanted to have a dynamic reflection of the player, because if he's walking over this area, you want to be able to see it. This is really useful because it's dynamic and it will show the player, whereas a cube map will take a picture or a prefab or whatever it does, and that is the image that it will reflect. It's useful in some things. It's definitely more efficient than this, but you know, this does the trick, and it's not that heavy, I don't think. Decals everywhere. Let's show you some of the shaders. So I set up. I'll show you probably the most impressive one, which is obviously going to be the floor. Go on, you can do it. That's done it. Okay. So we've got lerps, specular and normal are basically the same. So it keeps the setup of the green channel and the red channel and the blue channel. Well, not the blue channel, because that's on the height sort of section. I'll show you that in a second. So this lerps between, the first one lerps between this and this. This will paint on via this height map. I'm not too keyed up on what the power's doing and what the clamp's doing, but it's just there because it's what I've been shown. The example that I showed earlier has the thin, I think. Actually, no, it didn't. That's something else. I'm talking rubbish. Yeah. So that links up to the vertex color and paint via this. This is the reflection. So example of mask screen position. That's how it sets up sort of what it's looking at. Pretty cool. And that's the end result. I don't think it's going to show it. No. I'll show you the height that I set up. So this means that it can go up 20 units. If I wanted it to go down, I'll put it in this one. So that's flat, basically. I could have it so it's not flat, and every single surface in that level would be raised up by however much I put in it. It works on a 3-way axis. So B is height. I think green is Y and R is X. I think it's something you fiddle with really. It wasn't the initial purpose of this because it had sign and it sort of added like a wave through the sign. Not really what I wanted. I don't want like rocks that are wavy, so I took that out, and this has pretty much done the job for me. That's that. Let's show you the. God, how do I do it? Oh, okay. I'll show you this in fat that I've used. Play. How do you use this again? Come on. There we go. Whee. And it goes. What's that? Physics asset. Cool. This is the mesh which makes up all of these things that are used in splines. There's an issue with the spline actor in some instances. When there's a decal on it, occasionally there'll be like show a better example of where it's annoying. Like here, there's a decal projecting onto it, and it's like this is spazzed off up into the air. Don't really get why. Can't really fix it for some reason. Just a pain. But yeah, that's that. The spline actor is incredibly useful for this sort of thing. So it gives me a lot of flexibility of where I'm going to position things and where they're going to rest. It's not too good for like how it would rest physically because it's not dynamic and it won't sort of drop to the ground. And some of these, like that, wouldn't bend quite like that. I'd have to sort out the curve and that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much everything. I guess I could show you this quickly. Yeah. So this has got a for now, but I won't go through that. So this is masked off by this, and it comes that colour, and then it's fine. So this will be how frequent it will flash. At the moment I've just got it set to 1, but I could set it to 5 and it'll be like long, boring. Or I could set it to 0.2. Not doing nothing. There we go. But, you know, there's loads of things I could do with that, but it's just cool and what I need. I should have really modelled some extra details in here, but, you know, time was short and I had to rebuild the whole thing. Oh, why do I keep saying yeah? Cloth. You've already seen it really. Just got a bit of tearing. Simple. Got a fire particles. Really simple distortion effect. pretty much a YouTube video that just explained everything and I just followed that word for word. I didn't really adapt it at all. I should have really. Let's see what else. The lights flash, which I showed you earlier. I'll show you how. So it's just this. Actually, I think I've already showed you. I'm not sure. Yeah, just right click, set color, and come up with like so slow, so slow, and it crashed. But yeah, that pretty much sums it up anyway. It's very annoying that the decals have caused so much trouble. I think that's what's done it. It would make sense, but the decals add so much detail to it that I decided not to get rid of them for the composition shots at least. I'm not sure whether I should have, or if there's another way that I can adapt it so that decals don't cause a draw call every time you make one. But that's what it is. So yeah, thanks for watching, and cheers.